Oh wow, check out this old Coca-Cola sign. And then look across the street, you've got Bull Durham, K.F.P. Hall, Old Cigar, now 5 cents. And then you got a Red Wing Shoes. And then look at these old signs here, Sightseers. You've got a Click Chew Copenhagen, another tobacco sign. Oh, a couple more Marlboro signs. That Coca-Cola sign that I first pointed out. And then what is this? Wow. So many cool sights to see, and we just got into town. Hey Sightseers, it's your favorite sightseer, along with Leander and Marty. Hey! Who's gonna be on dog patrol today? And we're exploring the sights and sounds of Socorro, New Mexico. To start things off, we're over on Manzanares Street. And as you can see, they are doing a bit of construction here, but that's okay. We're gonna do our best to make our way across here without disrupting anything. It is Sunday, so it's not like we're interrupting construction. But as you can see, this was the building I was checking out all the cool signs on, and this really unusual display. I'm kind of thinking that this may have been some sort of saloon or otherwise drinking establishment, but I don't know that for sure. As Marty was walking the dogs, he pointed this out to me, an old burglar alarm. Check that out. Still sitting here on the side of the building. And then if we look up, we can see this sign here for beech nut tobacco. Who remembers beech nut chewing tobacco? And then there's the new Loma Stadium Cinema. Let's see what movies they're gonna be showing. Ah, looks like there's gonna be a new Minecraft movie coming out. Thunderbolts. And what else? A Complete Unknown. Must be something about Bob Dylan. Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning. So that's what you got going on here at the new Loma Stadium Cinema. Now this is cool. They've got this huge mural painted on the side of the building. K.F.P. Hall, Straightening Storms, Old Cigar, now 5 cents. And then if we look over here, it appears that we've discovered a registered cultural property known as the Knights of Pythias Hall. According to the sign, the building was built in the 1800s, and it is one of Socorro's prime examples of its Italianate style. And by the way, it is site number 594 of the state of New Mexico's registered cultural properties. Oh look, Marty's spotted something of interest. Let's go find out what he's looking at.
It says 1883, Union Stove and Machine. Does that say something?
Works, is it Leavenworth?
Yeah, it is Leavenworth, 1883, Kansas. See, this is one of them metal things that were casted. It is holding that, all this concrete above it up, all the brick and concrete.
Here's a better look so you can see how that support system holds up, you know, the building. And then at the top you can see that somebody's done a really nice job of painting the finials in a copper color. What a beautiful restoration, huh? Moving on down, we can see we've got Don Juan's Cocina here, where they sell burritos. Not open at the moment. Well, they're only doing to-go orders right now, it appears. And then we've got next door. What's the building next door, Marty?
Cannabis.
Uh-oh. We can't be speaking of such things here on YouTube, but there it is. All right, moving on. Okay, before we move on, I just want to point out the fact that the old cannabis shop is in what's known as the Shakespeare Building, which was built of adobe prior to 1886 as an office building and later was converted into a residence with a brick facade. And if you look, you can see the brickwork that's still there. Over here, we've got the neon sign, or the remains of the neon sign for the Belvedere Hotel. And you can see it was also once a steakhouse. Probably in its heyday, it was a really fine steakhouse and lovely hotel. You can see it's made out of brick. It's got this really cool archway, entryway in with, of course, the black iron gate leading into what would be like the courtyard. We can see that the courtyard once had a really nice fountain there. Of course, there would have been seating areas out here for people to enjoy fresh air after coming out of their hotel rooms, or perhaps to sit and enjoy a cocktail after filling themselves with a wonderful steak dinner. From this viewpoint, you can see that the hotel is in kind of a rough condition, appearing that it's probably been vacant for some time. They've got windows boarded up, and then you got the brick crumbling in up over there, broken glass up there, and the wood up here is deteriorating, but it looks like somebody is maybe trying to keep it from falling completely in disrepair, because you can see some newer, I don't know if those are 2x4s or what those are, but some newer pieces of wood strung in there as supports. Rounding out the block with the historic Hotel Valverde is Socorro's Electric Cooperative. It's kind of cool. If you cross the street, you'll find that they've got a drive-up drop box for you to place your payments. That's pretty nifty. I don't think I've seen that before, at least not in Wisconsin. Yeah, they've got a spot there and also a spot here. That's one way to make it convenient for people, save a stamp, and save you from having to pay online, where the chances of getting your information stolen seems to be getting greater these days. This is our first time here in Socorro. Well, I should say our first time actually stopping in Socorro. We've driven through it several times on our way to film other sites around this area of New Mexico. Just as reference, there's the old Hotel Valverde, kind of the back side of it, and then you've got somebody's home right there, and then there's this abandoned home here. In the early days of Sightseeing Sally, I would have been primed for climbing in there and exploring, except you just don't know anymore who or what you'll find inside. We're gonna head over now, I think, onto like the main drag through town, because we spotted, or Marty spotted, a couple of neon signs that I know you all will find interesting. See what I mean? The neon for the Roadrunner Steakhouse and Lounge. Coincidentally, it's for sale. This is the building right here. At one time they offered steaks, burgers, seafood, world-class beer, and wine shop. World-class beer. I'm sorry, I have to laugh. Coming from Wisconsin, I don't think there was anything world-class about the beer we drank back in the day. You know, Schlitz, Old Milwaukee, Blatz, Pabst, Budweiser, Busch Light. Yeah, nothing world-class about them beers, is it? This wasn't one of the things that Marty pointed out to me, but it is an old Lottaburger. You can tell it's been around a while from the sign. That was one thing Marty did tell me. He's on doggy and driver duty today, so that's why he didn't get out and say anything about it. But the one that he did point out to me that I know he really loved the sign for is just right up here. You see that for the El Camino family restaurant?
Looks like the balls you'd see that on them power lines, the big power lines when you're near an airport. That's what those remind me of. I wonder if that's what they actually were, if they were manufactured just specifically for signs.
Whatever it's supposed to be, you can tell from the sign that it has been around quite a while. And speaking of around for quite a while, or is it really not around for quite a while? I thought Radio Shack had gone out of business. Now here's something of interest that I didn't know about Socorro or about UFO history. According to this, one of the best documented UFO sightings in US history occurred here in Socorro by one of its very own police officers. Lonnie Zamora was the police officer, and this sighting occurred April 24th, 1964, and was investigated by many top scientists. Imagine that. It was cool. I'm going to point out a few interesting sights that they've got here to go along with the UFO sightings. They've got a 6-shooter alien right there wearing his cowboy hat. Then you've got this one here who looks like he's smoking a doobie of some sort. And then you've got this one here that's armed and dangerous. Of course, the old saying, the truth is out there. You've got a couple of fun signs. Warning, property protected by a highly trained stoned alien, not responsible for injury or possible death. Ooh, I'm getting the idea that I should be very, very afraid. The other thing to catch my eye was, of course, this big guy here. He's pretty fearsome, hanging out here, protecting his friends, the aliens back there, or maybe they're all protecting him. I don't know. Regardless, he does look awfully familiar. He reminds me of the gorilla that I met down in Pitcher, Oklahoma, so many moons ago in the world of Sightseeing Sally. By the way, for those of you wondering, all this wonderful stuff here is going down at the San Miguel Pottery Land. Moving on, we got a little sidetracked looking for something that turned out to be a bust, but since we discovered this old drive-in theater, we had to stop just to point it out. You can see, of course, the big screen out there, the building there for concessions, bathrooms, etc. And then all along here where the cars would have parked, you can see the poles where the speakers would have been. They're mostly tipped over, probably because they were looking to
Stealing copper.
So, there you have it. But it is a prime example of one of America's former favorite pastimes. Something I never got to participate in because, of course, my generation was a little bit late in getting to that party. By the time we were of the age of going to the drive-in movie theater to make out with your honey, those were pretty much gone by the wayside, and instead you'd go down to the lake and watch the submarine races.
Yep.
We're back over on the main street here. I believe this was Highway 60 coming in. I'll double check that. But the reason I brought you over here is because we've come to our first official scenic historical marker. This one is talking about the Garcia Opera House, which if you look right there, that's it. And the story told on here is the widow of Juan Nepomuceno Garcia took the gold that he had left her and built this very opera house. Construction started in 1884 and took 3 years to complete. For many years, it served as the main place for cultural and community events, including theater productions. I guess what makes this particular opera house so unique is that it has what's called a rake stage, and it's one of the very few of its kind in existence today. We're now over in what is Socorro's Plaza, the city square. This part of the square is known as Kittrell Park. It's Socorro's historic plaza. According to what I read, there's a doctor, Dr. Kittrell, who the park is named after. He's supposedly buried somewhere underneath the park. In like the 1850s, this is believed to have been an old army field, and then later it became part of the city's plaza. Dr. Kittrell, who was a dentist and a postmaster, apparently worked tirelessly to maintain this park, and so this park has been around quite a while. If we look over here, we can see that there's a sign pointing out the El Camino Real. If I'm not mistaken, Socorro was one of the main stopping points along the trail. And if you recall from the video I did last week about the Jornada del Muerto, I believe that that shortcut ended here in Socorro. If I'm not mistaken, the historic San Miguel mission was one of those stopping points where travelers would stop, rest, perhaps gain some supplies, you know, maybe get some medical treatment. I don't know. But if we look over here, we can see that this part of the square is known as Heritage Park, and it acknowledges or is a tribute to Elfega Baca, who lived from 1865 to 1945. Baca, if you didn't know, was born here. He went on and served the community in a number of different ways, including being clerk, superintendent. I believe he became a U.S. Marshal, was an attorney, became, I think, the district attorney. But the big thing to remember about Baca is that at one point he took on 80-some cowboys in a shootout. This event took place in Frisco, which, if I'm not mistaken, is now known as Reserve. This shootout lasted 33 hours, and if I'm not mistaken, 4,000 bullets were fired, and in the end, 4 lost their lives and 8 were wounded. You can see in front of me is the Baca House Brewery. It too is a registered cultural property, and you can see it was owned by Juan Jose Baca, built around 1870. Reading this, I don't know for sure if there's any family connection between the Baca that owned this and Elfego, the man involved in the shootout, but it does say here that the notorious Elfego Baca was a clerk in the Jose J. Baca Mercantile when he got the call to help right the wrong to the residents of what is now known as Reserve, but back then it was known as Frisco. Believe it or not, he did survive that gunfight. The other thing to point out is that this here is Bernard Street. This was actually where El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro ran. It just went right on down through here, and I imagine right on down that way. The other thing noteworthy about this sign here is that you've got pictures of what the Baca House looked like back in 1917 compared to 1963, and of course, nowadays. And that's pretty much it. I do see another historical marker up ahead. Why don't we go check that out next? There it is. I'll walk over by that in just a moment. Since we're standing out this far, I wanted to point out the beautiful mural that's painted alongside the City Hall building. It's got down in this right-hand corner what I believe is prickly pear cactus, the Mission Church, which I believe is still standing, and we'll get to see that here momentarily. Cowboy teaching a young boy how to rope. Sandhill crane. And then of course you got the people looking up at the night sky and UFOs. Well, here we go. Finally, information about how Socorro got its name. According to this, it derives the name from Juan de Oñate, whose caravan in 1598 had traversed the Jornada del Muerto of El Camino Real. If you saw the video from last week, you'll know that I did mention Juan as I was walking the Jornada. According to this marker, there was when Juan de Oñate arrived to this area, he encountered an El Piro Indian pueblo known as Tepana on the Rio Grande's west bank. For whatever reason, he decided to rename it using the Spanish word for succor, which is Socorro. Later, the name was transferred to the nearby pueblo Pilabo, which is the site of modern-day Socorro, and it was here that the Spanish built Nuestra Señora de Perpetuo Socorro in 1626. Later, it was abandoned during the 1680 Pueblo Revolt and then resettled in 1815, and the mission was rebuilt as San Miguel Church in 1821. If I'm understanding correctly, the church then was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. And here we are at the site of the old San Miguel Mission. If you want to talk history, this is it. And it is really well preserved and in beautiful condition. Let's not forget, though, what the mission used to do for people. Besides serving the needs, the spiritual needs of its people and trying to convert people, the mission did do certain things that were really important to travelers. You know, like I said earlier, it acted as a place for travelers, weary travelers, to rest, perhaps get food, needed supplies like water, even going so far as probably providing medical treatment to those who needed it, maybe even keeping people safe from, attacks by individuals out there. So really a lot more than just providing religion to people. Perhaps the best way to sum it up would be to applying the golden rule in real life and taking care of those who needed it. We're back over in the square. I think we're on what would be considered like the south end of the square. But before I get into what's here, I have a few shout outs I want to give. First, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to Robert from Albuquerque, who grew up in Texas, for generously tipping our trip jar. Also, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to Dennis from Wisconsin for generously tipping our trip jar. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to Jack P. from Massachusetts for once again generously tipping our trip jar. And then I'd like to give a special shout out thanks to Brian Beth and Cariz Beauty for becoming our latest members on Patreon. And then I'd like to give a special shout out of thanks to Richard B. for hitting us up with all the super thanks lately. Thank you so much. You guys rock. We try to stay frugal, try to, keep the spending under wraps. If you'll notice, I didn't patronize any businesses this time around. I feel like I've been spending money like a drunken sailor. But beyond that, all the help that you guys give us really is appreciated.
Helps in diesel fuel quite a bit.
Definitely does. And that way we can bring you to some really awesome places around America.
Thank you.
Now, for the interesting site that we wanted to check out over here. Would you believe that this hunk of, I think it's metal, was involved in the detonation at the Trinity site back on July 16th, 1945.
This 6-inch steel fragment from the explosion. My God, look at that. Look at the burn marks in this thing from the explosion. I assume that this wrapped around the explosive device or the nuclear device. It's a big steel ball, and when they detonated it, what they used to is take TNT and they would point it at a small ball full of uranium, and when they detonate that, it would crush that ball, and then it would split the atoms and it would explode inside this, from what I understand, and it tore apart this 6 to 8 inch thick steel sphere.
I certainly don't want to contradict anything that Marty's saying because he is quite knowledgeable on things, but there is a sign over here that I'm going to check out next, so we'll get the lowdown on what this hunk of metal is all about. According to the sign, which is an official scenic historic marker, it is a fragment from Jumbo, which was a huge steel vessel designed to contain an explosion.
What did I tell you?
I guess Mocha wants to get in on this explanation of Jumbo, but apparently Jumbo was originally 20 feet long, 12 feet in diameter, and weighed 214 tons. Its steel walls were 14 inches thick. Wow, 14 inches. Well, it looks like there's what, 6 remaining?
Yeah, that's about 6 or 7 inches remaining on that yet. So, goes to show you how much heat was there.
I'm no nuclear scientist, but I believe that means about half of it vaporized. The other interesting thing is that Jumbo was not used in the tests. It was actually kept 800 feet from ground zero. And it originally escaped without damage, with the exception of a steel superstructure around it, which was crumpled by the blast. Jumbo was used later in experiments, which resulted in the ends being blown out. And this piece of Jumbo is a souvenir of the world's first nuclear explosion. And if you saw my video about San Antonio, you know that that town was only roughly, as the crow flies, 25 to 28 miles from that blast. Moving along, we can see that at the south end of the square, Socorro has set up a memorial to those who have served. Here, they're acknowledging those who served as part of the Marine Corps. Across from that, you have this here honoring PFC Isidro El Baca. He was the first Socorro soldier to lose his life in Vietnam. He was killed by sniper fire and died on August 21st, 1967 at the age of 19. This park has been named in his honor. And then walking along, we can see the other memorials. They've got one for those who served as part of the United States Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and then, of course, the Coast Guard. And then we have here a World War II Bataan Memorial with an anti-aircraft. This isn't something I've heard before, but I'm going to read it. It says, "We're the battling bastards of Bataan. No mama, no papa, no Uncle Sam. They must have been POWs for 1,374 days. But don't quote me on that, I could be wrong. They also honor women that served in the military, all the branches, including the National Guard, and a tribute to New Mexico's National Guard. And then walking on along, they're honoring their Vietnam War veterans, remembering their Korean War veterans, also honoring their POWs, MIAs, and then last but not least, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those who have forgotten what the meaning of the pledge is, It's a promise, promising to our country and people to be good, respectful, and obey rules. Allegiance means to be loyal. You show respect by being nice to others as you would be to your best friends and family. A flag is a symbol. The United States flag with its stars and stripes is the symbol of our country. When we pledge allegiance to the flag, we promise to support our country and be responsible people. It shouldn't matter who you are, what side of the aisle you're on. We're all in this together. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Our country is not a divided country. We're one nation, unable to be broken. Moving on, we just spotted something of interest that we're kind of puzzled over. What do you suppose, Marty, this is all about? Any ideas?
I'm thinking just for a place to park for the night. I'm not sure.
There's 10 slots. It talks about paying here in advance, $250, 12 hours or less. No in-out privileges. If anybody knows, leave it in the comments below. And then the real reason why we pulled up over here was to show you this really old historic building, this white building here. It may have been either some sort of motel at one time, way back when, boarding house, whatever, but it appears it's now some sort of apartments, if it's still in use today, because you can see that each one has a number. This is just south of the square, just south of the memorial where we were just at, by the way. And then over here you've got the City of Socorro's transportation building, and it has a very interesting sign or placard right in front of it, so why don't we go check it out. In a nutshell, the brief version is that this was known originally as the new City Hall, and now it's known as the old City Hall. According to what's here, the building was known as the new City Hall. Construction on it began in 1938. However, due to a lack of funds, construction was halted. Yeah, you gotta have the funds, right? Well, I guess when the WPA or the Works Progress Administration finished building a new county courthouse, they were asked to help with the City Hall project, which they did. And for many years, this served as the City Hall until I believe the 80s. It must have sat vacant for a while because then in 2010 they received a grant to, I guess, probably fix it up or bring it back up to code. And now, as you can see, the City of Socorro Transportation makes it home here. Well, what do you think, Marty? Have we seen enough of Socorro for one day?
Yep, let's go.
You heard the man. Thanks for watching. Until next time.